Good evening and welcome. Live from the United Methodist Church in Crescent City, it's the District 5 Supervisorial Candidate Forum, presented by Redwood Voice Youth Media and KFUG Community Radio, in partnership with the Wild Rivers Outpost and the Norte Triplicate. Here are tonight's moderators, Pastor Dana Gilport of the United Methodist Church and Grant Merriweather from Redwood Voice Youth Media.
Hello, welcome to our third candidate forum. Tonight we're featuring candidates for supervisor for District 5. I'm Grant Merriweather from Redwood Voice Youth Media, and I'm joined by co-moderator Pastor Dana Gilport.
Thank you, Grant, and yes, welcome everyone. As Grant said, I am Pastor Dana Gilport, pastor of this beautiful church that is hosting the venue tonight. We'll be hearing from each of the 5 candidates running for District 5 tonight. And please be sure to introduce yourselves in your opening statements. And also, as you are answering questions, please keep in mind that you are in a house of worship, so mind your language.
Tonight our questions will be asked by a panel of media representatives composed of Mike Thornton from KFUG Community News, Jessica Cenar Andrews from Wild Rivers Outpost, Monique Camarena from Redwood Voice, and Dan Schmidt from the Triplicate.
And each question posed will allow for a 2-minute response from each candidate, uninterrupted. I will give you a 30-second warning as you approach the end of your time. As everyone has finished, there will be a final 2 minutes for the panelists to ask any follow-up or clarifying questions should they have any, which will give you each 20 seconds, and I'll be giving you a 10-second warning. So be mindful that it has to be brief in that follow-up question. And you should be able to see the time in the corner of the monitors. And again, I will be reminding you and giving you that 30-second warning and that 10-second warning. And if you go past your time, I will remind you lovingly. And then if you continue to go past it, I will get less and less loving.
So we'll begin with the 2-minute opening statements from each candidate. We'll begin with Susan Masten.
Great. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the honor of being with this candidates forum. I am honored and privileged to serve as your supervisor for the 5th District, and I am running for this office because I was blessed to have 40 years of community organization and activism and governmental experience. And so that allows for me to have a broader perspective about how we approach crisis issues, such as those we are facing in the county now with the law enforcement in jail, with mental health, with just housing, the housing crisis. All of those issues are critical for us and the development of this community. So I want to bring partners together, diverse partners together to the table, for us to look at solutions to the crises we face. And that means bringing department heads to the table, agencies, state and federal, the tribes, anyone and everyone to the table who can make a difference in planning for solutions for our county. And so want to be able to go after the infrastructure bill dollars, because those are one-time monies that could greatly assist us in addressing the issues we are facing. Roads included, roads, infrastructure, broadband, economic development, law enforcement, all the issues we are facing have those dollars are available to us. And we need to go after our fair share of those dollars and ensure that we secure those, because we need every available possible resource to be able to address these issues we are facing. It's been wonderful to I've held 4 town hall meetings, and it's wonderful to see the talent, experience, and wealth of knowledge in the community. And they have brought forward their issues of concerns, and they were a little different than mine, but that's my district's wishes. And so I'm looking forward to working with you and for you.
Thank you for your opening statement. The next candidate for their opening statement is Dean Wilson.
I'd like to thank the Redwood Voice and KFUG for sponsoring this and putting this out to the public so we can all have our voices heard in this time of political turnover. I hope, my hope is that through this process that we can find someone to fill Bob Berkowitz's seat. his passing, it was a tragedy and unexpected for both him and the family and the community as a whole. He had done so much for us, and at this point in time, I hope I can go in and actually do something forward and help this community. As I sit here in the Methodist Church, I have many fond memories growing up. In that upper balcony, I had my first kiss. When I was youth groups. Go youth groups. I asked for repentance. I'm good. Also, it was here 22 years ago that I was married to my wife, Mary. And those memories of living in this community and being a part of it for the last 56 years of my life has been wonderful. I served with the Crescent City Police Department for 23 years. At that point, I felt compelled to run for sheriff. The individuals that were running alongside of me, I didn't feel had a vision of change that was necessary and needed in Del Norte County at the time. I ran and glad, hopefully, I was absolutely astounded I got elected. It was very joyful for me and my family. And as we went forward for the last 12 years, I had an excellent group around me in the Del Norte County Sheriff's Office, and it was an honor to serve the men and women of that organization as well as this community. We had very rough and difficult times, and the experience I had working in county government, county budgets, and the relationship that I have, a positive one, with those that currently work in county government, I feel is necessary and needed to help the 5th District and Del Norte County as a whole. And I'm hoping for that vote. Thank you.
Thank you for your opening statement. The next candidate for their opening statement is Terri Colton.
Hi, my name is Terri Colton, and I'm running for the Board of Supervisors 5th District. I'm born and raised in Del Norte County. My parents are Jan and Ace Hartwick. I have 2 daughters here that live locally, Courtney Colton and Caitlin Griffin. I have a son-in-law, Richard Griffin, and my soon-to-be son-in-law, Rick Candela. I have 2 wonderful grandchildren that are local, and that's Rogue and Carson. Some of you know them as Chef R and Chef K if you've seen their videos. I came back from college in 1983 and met my husband of 32 years, Mike Colton, and he passed away in 2019. Also in 1983, I was asked to start on the JC's tournament committee. I have been doing that now for 39 years. I then, in 1985, started coaching at the high school. I was coaching for the Del Norte High School drill team, some people know as Redwood Rockettes, and I did that for 30 years. I've been on the Chamber of Commerce Board for 10 years. I've held every office and chaired every program that they have, every committee. I then was on the Senior Center Board for 4 years, and I was the person that did the fundraising to match all of the grants in order to build the new senior center that now you see on North Crest Drive. My employment consists of owning a local business, economic development, and accounting. My platform basically is to make Del Norte County healthy again. We need a strong sheriff's office. We need to handle the homeless crisis. We need to make sure all districts have sufficient internet, and we need sustainable economic growth without harming our footprint that we have here in our beautiful Del Norte County. Thank you.
Thank you for your opening statement. The next candidate for their opening statement is David Jones.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address everybody this evening here. I am running for the 5th District Supervisor seat that was held by the late Bob Berkowitz. Our district has been underrepresented for quite a while. I'm running because, with your help, we can have a voice for change. But before I go any further, I would like to give a short background on myself. I have been the president of the Klamath Chamber of Commerce for the past 4 years. As president, I have generated a new website to showcase our chamber members. I was the chairman of the Del Norte Redistricting Committee. I am the spokesman for the Measure R Oversight Committee. I petitioned the Board of Supervisors for and received $1,000 for the purchase of a new fire pump for the Klamath Fire Protection District's water tender. I also went out with the Del Norte Health and Human Services to do a count of the homeless. I am a retired building inspector. During that time, when I wasn't inspecting new construction, I was selected to participate in specialized projects. I developed, implemented, and monitored a computer and inspection program to collect and track data on off-site signs and billboards. This program had an annual budget of $20 million that generated over $50 million annually. I conducted specialized inspections, created a tracking system for visually blighted properties from first inspection to the resolution in high crime areas. This is also known as the broken window theory. Was part of an elite police task force that would target properties with gang and drug activity, lead strike teams that did targeted inspections for all types of illegal street vending. As you can see, I have a long history of serving and caring for my community. With innovative, out-of-the-box thinking, we need more deputies, infrastructure, and to take care of the homeless in our county. As your supervisor, I will be committed to doing all that I can to address these and many other topics that have plagued our community, being your voice for change. Thank you.
Thank you for your opening statement. The next candidate for their opening statement is David Markel.
Okay, my name is Dave Markel. I'm running for District 5 because this needs to have a change. The county government should work for the people. We have bad roads. We have the Sheriff's Department needs to be rebuilt. It's been a long time since 1995 when the Sheriff's Department has had anything done. I can tell you a little bit about myself now. I've been in District 5 for about 40 years. I was a former volunteer fireman. I reached as captain. Okay, I also assisted in building the substation in District 5. I also am a member of the Sheriff's Advisory Committee. I'm retired as a mechanic for timber industry. I achieved 32 years in this area. My experience, I have experience in a public board, basically. It's a water board. I'm here to fight for the people in Delaware County, and also the people in our district, which needs to be taken care of a lot better than we should, they have been in the past. I want to thank you again, David Martin.
Thank you for your opening statement.
Our first panelist will be Dan Schmidt from the Del Norte Triplicate. Please remember that each question posed by the panelist will allow for a 2-minute response from each candidate, from which you'll get a 30-second warning from me. And after everyone is finished, there will be a final 2 minutes for the panelists to ask any follow-up questions, for which you'll each have 20 seconds to respond. Dan?
Thank you. I'd first like to say a few words about my father, who died this morning.
Oh, no.
He was a county supervisor in Ventura County.
Sorry.
And my interest in politics and journalism came from that experience. So, back to the questions.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Now, is there any area of the county budget that you believe is receiving a greater share of its tax dollars than it should when compared to other budgeted items? In other words, is some area getting more than it should, thereby leaving other areas that are getting less than it should? And what would you do to properly allocate those tax dollars across the board? Supervisor Mastin?
Okay, so with the budget, I think that my approach is that we need to take a look at how we're doing business, because what we are doing with our tax dollars hasn't worked to date. We're in crisis all across the board, like I mentioned before, with mental health, with law enforcement, with the jail, with housing, And so I want to bring people to the table to begin to talk about how we better use those dollars to actually service people and to find solutions together. And that can't happen unless we're all sitting at the table having the conversation. So I'm talking about bringing mental health, bringing the Health and Human Service Department together, bringing law enforcement, bringing the schools, bringing everyone to the table so we can look at how we're providing services to our people and how can we do it better. And that takes thinking outside the box. It's not how we traditionally do business, but what kind of models can we use to think outside of that box. It's going to really think of the whole family, the whole child, so that we don't have repeat offenders within the system. And we can't do that unless we begin to approach it that way, where we think about dealing with the mental health issues, dealing with the families in crisis, before they reach a point where they're in the system. And so that's how I think we should approach it. And then if we need to realign our budget to match this new way of doing business, then we begin to look at the budget.
Thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh.
Did I cut you off there?
Oh, I sort of got caught in this 30 seconds, but it's really about understanding what we're trying to do for people in need and how we're going to do that. And it's not working right now, so tax dollars could be spent better if we find new models that work.
Thank you very much. Sheriff?
Yes. The county budget is about 8 years ago, the county budget was around $90 million. Last year, it was around $173 million. Much of that growth was in the last 2 years of COVID funds flooding into Del Norte County as well as other county communities. And so, but when you're talking about the budget, what you really have to focus in on is that which comes in through our taxes, which is what we consider the general fund dollars. Of that, there's about $35 million. 58% of that goes to what they consider public safety, which is everything from the dog catcher all the way through to the jail and all the funding that goes to the sheriff's office as well as other probation, the courts, your code enforcement officer. All those are considered law enforcement or public safety funds. And so when you're looking at what we can actually utilize for the things that are of high demand in the county, we have to prioritize. And I don't believe that where we are putting our funds is necessarily where the public would choose to put our funds. We have some dramatic rebuilding that has to be done, but also, and one of the reasons why I threw my hat in at this time is if you look at the horizon and what we're facing going forward, I believe Del Norte County is going to be facing some very stiff headwinds, and we have to have someone on our board that can look at that and help navigate our county, our community through the difficult times that are coming with high inflation as well as reduction in what we're seeing in our prisons.
Thank you.
Well, after looking at the budget and how much it's expanded in the last couple of years, and then watching the Measure R dollars come in, and we still seem to be, the departments still seem to be, as they say, underfunded, which concerns me. I am a person that likes to get in, pull a business apart, and see where all the expenses are coming from, what's happening. And I think our county, I think we really need to do this. We need to pull each department apart. We need to see what's happening with the money. Where's it going? I just don't understand how we don't have enough in the areas that are needed. So I would like to go in and tear it apart, piece by piece, and put it back together and see where it comes out on the other side. I believe there are some that are underfunded, and I believe there's some that are probably overfunded. But until we get in there and figure that out, I really don't have that answer.
Thank you.
Being a spokesman for the Measure R committee, I can tell you that the funds that are coming in from Measure R are going into areas that have been underfunded. Areas like the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff's Department has just gotten a new dispatcher, and they have a new records clerk. They've also been able to expand code enforcement by adding another code enforcement person. They've also, with the Sheriff's Department, they've bought 3 new vehicles and a new van to transport the inmates. I guess the old one was 25 years old and the wheels were falling off it. A lot of these areas are underfunded. Yes, we've gotten a lot of extra dollars over the last couple of years. I don't know where they have gone. I would like to see where they have gone. I know, and as your supervisor, I will look into all of that and make sure that the funding is appropriate for the division, whether it's roads, whether it's the Sheriff's Department, the Probation Department, the jails, that kind of thing. I think they need to be audited, and I think they need to have somebody to look over them and see where there is places to either trim it or expand it even more.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Markel?
Well, I believe that we have too big of a government system in here. I mean, we're putting almost all our taxpayers' money into the government. There's a lot of places that we need to be putting this money. The Sheriff's Department is one. You got to remember, if we don't have a Sheriff's Department, we have no law enforcement. You know, I mean, I think that the government can be trimmed down a lot. There's a lot of wasteful spending, and we just need to put more money into the roads instead of the government, because you got to remember, this budget, this even Measure R, went to funding employees. I mean, that just tells me that they're not living within their means of tax space. They got to live within the tax space. They can't be relying on these special measures to build them up. You know, basically, you got to remember, Measure R is going to be a job killer. I mean, who wants to bring a business into Delaware County if they're paying high taxes and they could just go across the border and get what they want, no taxes? I mean, it's just a killer. I want to thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any follow-up questions or clarifying questions tonight, Dan?
No, not right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Monique Camarena from Redwood Voice.
Thank you. Addressing youth mental health and the lack of mental health services for youth in Delaware County have been topics of concern for a long time. If elected, what will be on your agenda for improving access to quality mental health services for youth and creating an environment that supports mental health in our community? This is for everybody.
We'll start with Mr. Wilson.
Mental health services, unfortunately, in Delaware County are abysmal. We are lacking in those areas, especially the fact that we have no psychiatrist in Delaware County. As sheriff, I've dealt with mental health issues directly because many of the inmates that commit crimes that had mental health end up in your jails for extended periods of time. And mental health is a crisis, but one of the issues that we have in the mental health, in any medical community, is first we have to identify those that need help. That identification can come from multiple sources, and training of those individuals so that they can see and identify the problems, especially with those individuals, especially young individuals in the age of preschool to first grade, is critical. The developmental age group that we're dealing with can oftentimes, with proper identification, help mental health issues with young children, pre-adolescent children, but that area between 3 and 4 is critical. If they can be identified early and help can be moved into those families, then long-term mental health issues within that can be helped and be averted, because as the brain is developing, sometimes if they're caught too late, the mental health issues that child will have to deal with for the rest of his life are already and cemented inside that child at a very young age. And so for mental health, it's identification. One of the hindrances around identification is once you have the information, it's very hard to pass it on to others that can provide services.
Thank you.
Ms. Colton?
So I think, first of all, for mental health, I believe we need to get rid of the stigma. The stigma within our youth and mental health and getting that help, it makes it really hard. As being a coach in the school district for so many years, I saw so much of it come and go, and there was just nowhere to even recommend. We need to partner side by side with the school district. We've got to get programs into the schools. We have to get it in there so that the minute that the teachers, because they're one-on-one right there with the children, they have to be able to have a place to send the kids, and that it not be a negative place to go, that it's a positivity and their help, because our teachers are number one. They're right on the front lines with them, and they're our best identifiers, and so we need to utilize them. We need to partner with the tribes. They have some social service groups that can help. And so I just think building up great partnerships, we need to take the stigma away. We need to have the services within the school district and have easy access to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Well, I kind of agree with what Ms. Colton was saying. I think that we should have stuff in the school systems for our children to have access to those, whether we have a counselor on site, that if a teacher identifies them, that they need to have some extra help, that counselor goes directly to that student and starts mentoring them or doing whatever needs to be done to try and help them. I believe that all the youth that have this issue need help, and we should be able to provide the help to them. I believe our Health and Human Services that we have now has been a failure because they haven't really gone to address all of this issue, and we need to have somebody to come through and help train them and teach them to look for these issues. And we should have at least one psychiatrist that is on staff here with the DHHS, if not 2 or 3, but with the way the economy and the way things are right now, it's almost impossible to get anybody to come to this area because it's such a small community. And we have to create incentives for them to come, whether it be helping a psychiatrist get his degree and have him sign a contract with us in DHHS for 3 to 5 years, so we can have somebody on staff that can actually do some work and actually be here to help them.
Mr. Markel?
Yes, mental health is a big problem in this county. I have a nephew. His dad was homeless, and he had mental health problems. So I've been through the family with the mental health. We have a psychologist that is being seen over the TV. I mean, basically a computer. And I don't think a person gets enough help because it just doesn't work, because it takes a long time to get an appointment for the psychologist. Sure, you got the staff that will help, but I think it needs to be one-on-one, as in person. You got to have that ability, but this county just doesn't provide that. There's just not enough money there, and it's a big budget that the social services have, and it needs a lot of help.
Thank you.
Supervisor Mastin?
Yes, so this was on the top 3 in the town hall meetings of importance, mental health and the mental health of our youth. And I think that we need to start in the schools with educating our children about feelings and what's normal and what's not normal. And so when you have anxiety or you have depression, you need to get help. And you need to get assessed, and you need to get timely assessed. so that you don't become a problem later in law enforcement. Because if you never get diagnosed and you never get treated, you end up in the jail system at some point. And so helping, not all things cost money. We can train community members, we can train family parents, we can train teachers, we can train everyone how to recognize when someone is having a mental health issue, and then be prepared to refer them to the appropriate place. And once they get referred, then having availability of 24-hour crisis calls, or a crisis unit that is there, that they know where to go. So we need to find the solutions, and it's not always the government that provides the solution. As community members, we can find solutions to this, finding healthy, good alternative activities for our children so that they're active, doing things that they like to do, is also helpful for dealing with depression and anxiety.
Thank you.
Any follow-up or clarifying questions?
If you could each add on, what if the students aren't motivated to go to school, or their home life is horrible? What would be another option for mental health services in the county?
And don't forget, you have 20 seconds each, and we'll start with Ms. Colton.
20 seconds.
Sorry.
I think there's a lot of kids that aren't in school today. I think they're in charter schools, they're in other schools. We're going to have to reach out, and I think the only way to do it is to go to the charter schools, the churches, the different places that we have community groups that kids do come and gather, and try to get that stigma away and get them some help.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
I think we ought to go through the churches and other places where these children congregate, whether it be at, activities, baseball, football, whatever, and have somebody talk to them and try to identify them and try to get them the help they need there and try to get them on the right path.
Thank you.
Well, I agree with Mr. Jones on that aspect. But you got to remember, a lot of this mental health starts at the homeless, and that's got to be addressed for the whole thing. I mean, we just need better help for the homeless, basically. There's a lot of mental health there.
Thank you.
Supervisor Mastin?
Yes, and so this is back to my comment earlier that deals with the whole family, the whole child. If we recognize that a child's not in school, then we can find out why that child's not in school. And if we're trained to identify mental illness, then we're able to provide and make sure that they get the help that they need.
Mr. Wilson?
The best way I can is identification. The sooner we can identify those that are at the beginning, hopefully, of an issue. When you notice the first absences from a school, when you notice that someone is no longer taking active part in something that they've done already before, when you see signs that indicate that there are problems in their life, then that's when we need to have that intervention.
Our next panelist is Jessica Cenar Andrews from Wild Rivers Outpost.
Klamath is unique in that it is largely separated from the rest of Del Norte County. Its residents have stated they feel overlooked, and accessing medical services, secondary education, and even a grocery store is difficult. Outside of fixing last chance grade, what will you do to lessen that disconnect?
And we'll start with Mr. Jones first.
Well, seeing as how I live in Klamath, there's a lot of things that can be done to overcome this. One is to have police services down there, because police services are non-existent down there. We also need to have ambulance services there. We just had one of my friends was just taken in by ambulance, and with Del Norte Ambulance, he had had a mild heart attack, and it took him 40 minutes to get him back to Sutter Coast. because of the way the Delaware ambulance operates. They can't go over the speed limit. If they go over the speed limit, they have an alarm that goes off in their ambulance, and then those people that are in there, the EMTs that are there, they get written up for speeding. We need to have more services besides that, besides the fire and the police. We need to have more access to get to places, to have more stuff come to us. I do believe we need to have a market there, and I've been working hard to try and get a market down there over the last 2 years, and it looks like it may come soon. I don't want to give too much away because it may not happen, but I've been working on it. And that's the biggest thing, is not having a full market down there. And we need to have that addressed besides having the other vital services that we have. Our Klamath Fire is underfunded and understaffed, and they're not really very, they're not very well motivated because they feel like they're the redheaded stepchild down there, for lack of a better word. And as the supervisor, I would make sure that we would get more services down there, and it could be any number of things. I mean, I could go on with a list for about the next 30 minutes on what kind of things we could do down there. Thank you.
Mr. Markel.
Yes, I agree with a lot of what Mr. Jones is talking about. I have a lot of friends down in Klamath. You got to remember, just going to a hardware store, it takes them, you might as well call it the whole day, just for a little screw or a nail or something like that. I don't know why we can't get someplace like Ace come in and also put a sub place. You got the old station where Kathy used to have a little hardwares. I don't know why it can't be done. It needs cell phone coverage because I'm already working at that in Birch Track through the Birch Ocean View Water District. We're already working on a tower there, and I think we might be able to maybe talk to the man that's interested tower there to see what they can do in Klamath too. So I want to thank you, I guess. And
Thank you. Supervisor Mastin.
Yes, so we haven't had a representative from Klamath since 1993, and that was Supervisor Mallett. And so I think exactly what I have done, people need to know their voices heard, and they need to know that they were listened to. And I think town halls and being there with them to hear what their concerns are and to work with them on the solutions that make sense for them is the appropriate thing to do. And there are a lot of talented, gifted people in Klamath, and you bring them together, they come up with some pretty good solutions to the issues that we're facing. So connectivity, I live in the Glen, not having reliable phone service or internet service is an issue for a business or for a student or for just communicating with your family. And so we need to ensure that that happens. We need to build a sense of community back that is based on trust. And I think that a supervisor has a responsibility to make sure that they are meeting with the people who live in Klamath, hearing what their concerns are, and looking for solutions together to make sure that they get addressed.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Klamath is unique, and one of the things I most love about Klamath and the people that live there is their resilience. Those people understand the living conditions that they chose, living in the Glen or living in Hunter Creek, living in Requa. I had the occasion of dealing with floods at that point in time when many of those communities became isolated. The county, our response was to put I put a deputy into the Glen so that they had at least some kind of law enforcement response and some communication with emergency services directly during that flood period of time. But they understand the conditions that they live in, and they depend and come together as a community, and they respond to each other's needs. That independent spirit is alive and well in Klamath. When that flood was over and resources could finally be moved in, we were already too late. The communities had cleared the roads themselves. They had taken care of the problems. They had dealt with their issues. They don't ask permission, nor should they have to. They go and they take care of their communities and make sure the people that are in those own communities, those that have the needs, are dealt with, and that they provide for each other and take care of each other. They look after each other because they have lived that way for decades. The community has to have the support of the county to encourage that resilience and to support the county to add to that, so that they have emergency trained personnel in those areas where they live, because isolation is a reality that they live with. And as a board member, if I get elected, I'll make sure that Klamath has the support to meet those needs, because within themselves, it's there.
Thank you. Ms. Colton.
So I worked for the tribe, the Yurok tribe, for 10 years, and I was 8 years in their economic development department. I was their deputy director, and one of the largest hurdles that we had to go over was, how do we bring business here? How do we make these businesses flourish? How do we make the tourists come? How, all of those things. Well, if you don't have good internet service, a tourist is not coming. I mean, they just don't. And you need a fire. I mean, the whole fire department needs equipment. They don't have updated equipment. We need emergency services down there. I sat with 2 people at 2 different times waiting for medical help, and it was 45 minutes away. We need to have services within Klamath, not just coming to Klamath. There needs to be fire with adequate equipment. There needs to be an officer there that's there 24 hours a day, not just 9 to 5. On the weekends, somebody that can be called with a minute's notice. We need an ambulance down there. To be down there and to know you're calling for emergency services and nobody shows up for 45 minutes is pretty scary. And so I also look at the other side of the economic development, is that you need those things. I mean, if you need those things in order to prosper. So I remember trying to get deliveries there. I mean, when you say you're in Klamath, they're like, okay, or services, different services coming from Eureka. It's just nobody wants to come. So there's a lot of obstacles, and I believe, as a person who's worked there for so many years, and my heart's there, that I would be able to service them very well. Thank you.
Any follow-up or clarifying questions?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Mike Thornton from KFUG Community News.
Thank you. First, I'd like to say thank all of you for stepping up to run for public office. Thank you for being here, and also condolences to Dan on the loss of his father today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Being able to effectively represent all the residents of the 5th District means being able to balance the needs and goals of the people living in the Birch Track with those of the people living in Klamath. In many ways, these are very disparate communities. Additionally, this includes working effectively with the sovereign Yurok tribal nation and Rezagini Rancheria, whose citizens are also residents of Del Norte County. How will you, as a county supervisor, accomplish this? And this is more about how you would go about doing this incredibly challenging job, I would think, as compared to, well, we need more police. How will you go about accomplishing being a representative for this very disparate district?
We'll start with Mr. Markel.
Yeah, that's a tough question. But right now, I believe the police department has a cross deputy down there. The county needs to work with them, and they have the same problems which I have in roads. Roads is a major problem. I mean, there's a lot of problems if emergency vehicles can't go down. You know, as far as response, you know, right now we have last chance that takes sometimes up to 45 minutes to just get by there. You know, it's a real bad problem. As far as like I said once before, they just need a lot of development, and we need to create partnerships with the tribe, which is pretty much focused down in that area. You know, there's that might be able to mitigate a lot of these problems. You know, and it's going to take partnerships. I mean, you can't pull no punches. You can't do anything like that. There's no real clear way to go until you have partnerships. You know, there's the fundings has trouble there, where the tribe may be able to get grants to help these areas out. You know, as far as us in the county as the supervisors, we need to try to help with money and stuff that they need.
30
you know,
seconds.
We need, like I said, we need better services down there, period. That's all I could say about that. I mean, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Supervisor Mastin.
Yes, so I have already begun to do something in the connectivity, because Birch Track and Klamath have similar issues for reliable phones and stable internet connection. And so I've already begun to attend the state meetings and on connectivity. Both of them are the Affordable Connectivity Program that offers money to help with internet access. The other is the State Broadband for All, which is going to connect along a Caltrans route, connect Klamath to Crescent City. But we have to be at the table to ensure that those get priority ranking. And so already have taken that step. I know that Birch Track has identified potential sites already for phone service, and we need to focus on meeting with the phone company to put a tower up that would provide for better service. So on those issues, I see there's a lot of similarity. We all need law enforcement, which is a priority in each of the districts that precincts that I held town hall meetings in. They're all concerned about mental health. And they're all concerned about, the other thing was youth and youth activities. That was their top three. That was a top three in every precinct. It wasn't isolated to one. And so we're a lot closer than we think. Partnerships are critical. I've mentioned that on numerous times, bringing diverse people together. We have limited resources. We have to do that. If we sit at the table together, we can figure out how we meet the needs of everyone, and it's not one segment, but how we can come together as a community to provide for our community needs.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
As you travel around District 5, it is very disparate between Klamath and several other areas within the Klamath community, also within the Birch Track. It's, from home to home, from lot to lot, it can be completely a different situation as to the needs of what they see as concerns, from homelessness to blight, to crime, to the poor road conditions, to communication issues. All of those issues. But the main part as a supervisor is to actually listen to the people and their problems. Far too often, I've seen people shut down at these meetings and not allowed to express and to totally be heard. When I was in law enforcement and we would come to these people's houses, oftentimes there was little I could actually do, but they wanted to be heard. They wanted to be understood. And merely giving them the time and the attention that they deserve, listening to someone's issues and their problems, even if they know that there is little that can be done by government to solve that problem, the fact that you cared enough to actually pay attention and to listen is important to our communities. As supervisor, I will listen and look for ideas and solutions that I may not have. I don't think I have all the solutions. I don't. I'm not always the smartest one in the room. There are people much smarter than me. And looking to combine and find those solutions outside of government if necessary, because I don't believe government is a solution to most of our problems. And finding ways to work together, that's how we can better these communities as a whole.
Thank you. Ms. Colton.
Can you repeat the question?
If we think of the 5th District as being very disparate, how will you as a supervisor manage all of the various needs and issues that are being brought to you in a fair and equitable manner?
Thank you. I've always been one that's been very open, and I have really good communication, talking to people, sitting down with people. I think town halls are good, but going door to door the last few weeks, wow. I mean, you meet people in your community you never knew were there. They tell you their issues, and it's just like, you have to be open. And I'm a person that always thinks outside the box, and so I'm always trying to think of different ways that you can open up the communication with people. And I think we need to form partnerships with the tribes, the Rezagini, and with Elk Valley, and with the Yurok tribe, and have different forums and have town halls. But we can't just show up and nod our heads and take our notes and stuff. I mean, you got to do something with that. I think I'm a person that's a worker, and so the minute I get stuff, get things in my hands, I want to go fix it, and I want to go take care of it, and so I would just form people around me that could help me have that communication that's open out into the community, and then bring it back, and hopefully I can start making some solutions. We do have a cell tower coming. There has been a fund, a grant funded for a tower in the Birch Track that's supposed to be going up this summer. So that is hopefully going to be helping the issue. The road conditions and all of that. We just have to stand up. There hasn't been a lot of, not support for the District 5, but there hasn't been anybody there for a bit. And so I would hope to be there and to be able to listen to people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
My thinking is to make partnerships with all the tribes, sit down with them, listen to their concerns, figure out ways to get solutions with them as a partner. That to me is very important. District 5 is very diverse and it's very geographically challenging. But if you look at it logically, they're both the same in a lot of respects. You have roads that need to be repaired. You have cell towers that need, that need to be installed. You have internet that needs to be done. You need emergency services that need to be there. And there's innovative ways to do things to take care of that. I mean, one innovative way to, stem the tide of say, policing is doing something that, Sheriff Wilson brought up to me almost 8 years ago, which was having volunteers on patrol. That would be a way to stem that, where if you have somebody that goes out and just drives around to just make a presence that there's somebody there, that can help, that would help stem the tide. And it's also been proven in other jurisdictions, especially in Southern California, where if you have somebody where there's a vehicle that looks like an official vehicle, the crime goes down because they figure that there is somebody there that will come and come and take care of them, and it will reduce crime. But I think we need to have a partnership with the tribes, with the Board of Supervisors, and with all the other people involved, the Sheriff's Department, probation, and all of those. And as the supervisor, I would look for innovative ways like that to try and stem the tide and try and bring more services into the area.
Thank you. Any follow-up or clarifying questions?
I do, actually. With everything that you said, commonality, humanity, and there are disparate issues and needs as well. There's the use of inflammatory rhetoric that seems designed to divide and turn neighbor against neighbor. Is that actually helpful? Because it seems that that gets used a lot, not just nationally, but locally as well. How does that help or hinder you in trying to do the job of being a supervisor for a district like District 5?
We'll start with Supervisor Mastin.
Okay, well, understanding tribal governments, because I created a tribal government, and knowing who to talk to within tribal governments and working with them closely is important to me. And it's important because they are citizens of this county, and they need to be included in the solutions for this county. But I also recognize that we are diverse. We have a lot of different races within our district, and it's important that each of their voices be heard as well, as anyone else. And it shouldn't be differentiated between one citizen and another. They're just citizens.
Mr. Wilson.
Anything that you use that stops or hinders communication should not be done. I mean, we can tailor our words so that it expresses the need for further communication, but we should never use incendiary or rhetoric or words that we know are going to inflame passions and therefore shut down communication.
Ms. Colton.
Yeah, we need to keep the communications open on both sides. I think it's really important that we treat everybody with respect, and that's how I've always treated everybody, whether they treated me that way or not. And so I think going into this, if you treat everybody with respect, that you will be treated that way.
Mr. Jones?
I agree with Ms. Colton, but we should all be treated equally. We should not have any kind of you're this or I'm that. We should always look at each other with respect, treat each other with respect, but also realize that we are all humans and we are all in this together, and together we can make a change.
Mr. Markel?
Yes, you got to look at it like this. When I grew up in this area, we went to school with tribal members. It don't matter who they were, what race or reality. We all liked each other. We all got along. That's what you got to deal with it all. There should be nothing has to do with race.
Thank you. Our next question will come again from Dan Schmidt from the Del Norte Triplicate. Dan?
Thank you. Well, okay, there seems to be an awful lot of money flying around from government. We've all survived the pandemic and all saw people, forced out of their jobs, and then not necessarily willing to go back and get another job when it opened up, because there's too much money floating around free from the government. Now we hear that there may be many, many millions and millions of dollars available to counties and cities to build homeless shelters or other projects that the state government wants us to do. Do we need to take the state's money, or can we say no? Because, like you pointed out, Sheriff Wilson, Klamath people know how to take care of themselves. Well, maybe the whole county knows how to take care of itself too, and we don't need to be told what to do from Sacramento. We can do it our way. What do you say? What do all of you say?
We'll start with Mr. Wilson.
No, we don't need to be looking at taking every dollar that comes flying out of Sacramento. And in fact, as you look at the homeless situation and the billions and billions of dollars that California has thrown at this problem, and what we've ended up as a result is we've ended up getting more of it, like many government programs. Anytime you throw government money at something, you tend to get more of it than less of it. You don't get solutions to these problems, you just get more of the problem. Now, I don't believe that we should be doing things that are going to be long-term problems that the county will inherit. A lot of the one-time money that comes to build something or to get something, often that money does not last. It may be a 3-year grant or a 5-year grant. After that, you have to absorb the expenses of operating that program. As sheriff, I turned down many programs because the priority was getting patrol out on the streets. When you take that money, you have to assign somebody to that program. That assignment takes them away from their other duties, takes them out of the process. We've seen a huge expansion in HHS because of this money that comes in, that programs are having to be supported, and then personnel has to be assigned to that program. And then we get in this really bad loop of government seeking money to continue to support the people that we have, as opposed to what is truly best for our community. Franklin said that to make someone, the best thing to deal with poverty is to make them uncomfortable in it so that they seek to go out and get those jobs. Look up and down our streets, help wanted signs in every store. Those should not be that way in our community.
Thank you. Ms. Colton.
I think a lot of the money that's coming down from the state and nationally, that there's strings attached. And I don't believe we should accept money with strings attached, first of all. Secondly, a lot of the grant money, there's designated things that it's for and what you can spend it for. So a lot of times you can build a beautiful building, but you have no money to operate these buildings with. And so I think it's concerning to me that when the government starts handing all this money out, that there's no infrastructure money, there's no, operational money, there's no, you're just kind of stuck with this building, and then you've got to provide the services in it, and you've got to, fund the employment, people in it. And so that's concerning to me, and I think that we look at this and we see all this free money coming down and we're just like taking it in, but then we don't realize that there's consequences on the other side of it. And there is there's not a shortage of employees anymore. We need to get people back to work. We need to figure out what we have to do to have people start wanting to go back to work. And I think we need to get rid of the abundance of money for that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
With all the money that is available, I agree that there are a lot of strings attached typically with monies that come from the state or come from the federal government. Those things need to be looked at before we even try to get some of that money. If there's going to be something where it's only a 3-year grant and then we're stuck with having to do something with it, like with the building that's empty now, we spend $10 million in a building, we can't fill it, or we can't use it, it's a useless piece of equipment. We need to be able to see with those grants and see how, with me being as a supervisor, how those grants we get will be able to translate into permanent jobs, permanent positions, permanent funding, and that leads into the infrastructure, where we need people to have jobs, where we have openings all over the place in town right now. We need to have those filled. We need to have more jobs. We need to bring more people here to have better housing, to have more businesses, large and small, here, so we get a better tax base, so when those grants go bad or end, we have the infrastructure to support those after that grant is gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Markel?
Well, right now, we need jobs. I mean, we need businesses. We need businesses that'll make our money, our taxes, pay taxes for a long period of time. I'm not good at this, as you know. But anyway, we can't keep living off grants. I mean, government's getting too big. Our county government is. Their funding is, you got to rely on Measure R to pay off the employees as far as their retirement and everything else. I mean, it's just too big. You're losing money. I mean, you have to stick within your means. I mean, you have to be reliable where you're taking the money out. I mean, so grants is not going to help you because it's short term. You know, it's just like anything else. We need something that's going to last forever. Businesses, you know, and to achieve businesses, we're going to have to lower tax rates. You know, that's like I said before, Oregon's across the border. Nobody's going to start a business here where people don't come when they can shop out of state. You know, and it's a big problem in this county. I thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Mastin.
Yes, well, I think we have a problem, and so we have to find a solution. And I've been looking at models, and there's a Hope Village that's over in Medford, our Rogue Valley area. It's RV park. They can have tents or RVs within there. It's a lockdown, no alcohol, no drugs, with support services. So mental health. If we do not do assessments and get people the help they need, then they are going to continue to be an issue, and they're going to end up in jail, because that's what happens with homeless when they're on drugs or they're it's a high number because of mental illness that plays a big part. And so if we continue to leave it unaddressed, and that's when I was talking about the whole person, the whole family, and bringing resources so that, you know, have a mentor, you know, partner with the unions and see about apprenticeship, have them build homes for people, you know, have them, instead of putting them in jail, you know, have people have restorative justice where they go out and they clean up the blight that's in the area. I mean, there's just some creative ways that we can address things, but I think we need the money to assess, give people the proper assessment so that then we can get the proper help and combine it with job opportunities. And you just have to bring people to the table. And we're not, you know, you can't just ignore the problem. It's not going to go away. It's just getting worse.
Thank you. Any follow-up or?
Good to go.
Our next panelist is Monique Camarena from Redwood Voice.
Thank you. The trend has been that youth graduate and leave Del Norte due to the lack of opportunities in the area. What would you do to change this and increase investment in the future of our local young adults?
We'll start with Ms. Colton.
Well, this one's near and dear to my heart because I have 2 grandchildren that one of the reasons that I'm here, sitting here before you, is to try to make Del Norte County a place that they can either stay or come back to. I just think that we're going to have to, you know, kind of expand our programs within the colleges in order to have more degrees that are available here for our kids to participate in. Once they get the education, then you have to have the economic growth in order to have a business for them to come back to even do. I'm lucky enough to have both my daughters be here and be in good professions, but there's not enough here for everybody to do that as of now. So at this point, my job is to get some economic growth, get Del Norte County back to be vital like it was in the 90s, and we were a booming tourist town, and hopefully we can bring some more industry here, but we also have to be very mindful and not hurt the footprint of Del Norte County as we're doing it. But I think the biggest thing is to get more educational resources and then to work on our economic development so they can come back.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
I think that for our youth, they should have a mentorship program. In fact, at today's Board of Supervisors meeting, they had a presentation on mentorships that are being ran, I forget the name, I think it's E3, I think is what it was, that are 4 to 6 weeks that the youth can participate in, and they can get up to 10 elective credits in. That is an excellent start. I think that in high school, there should be more of, like, when I was in high school, we had wood shop, we had metal shop, we had auto shop. We should have some of those services, some of those things, so children can, the young adults can have a place to go to where they can learn a blue-collar skill. Everybody nowadays wants a computer job or something along those lines, and and people forget that we still need to have electricians, we need to have plumbers, we need to have HVAC guys, we need to have carpenters to do all these other blue-collar jobs, and those are desperately needed here, as they are everywhere else. And if we have a mentorship program with the county, with the city, with other partners, that would help to create them to have a good work ethic, number one. Number two, it would give them a trade. And number three, it would make them want to stay here and build our community back. And as the supervisor, I would be all in on that to try and get more of that to come to fruition. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Markel.
Yeah, for one reason, we need to be business friendly. You know, we're not business friendly in Del Norte County. You look at the amount of jobs that we've lost. We've lost good paying jobs in the fishery. I mean, basically, the fishery's going down. The harbors decided to put condos and what is it, solar panels. I mean, I don't think that's the way to go. I mean, you have to have jobs to keep kids here. So we need to make it work friendly. You know, we've got work experience in high school. I mean, I went through the program. We have metal shop. We also have auto shop. We have a wood shop already. You know, we need jobs that kids can go to make good money. I mean, they have to have it. We don't have that here now. And there's no place for kids to stay. You know, there's no business they can stay in. They all got to go out of the county. I mean, it's just the way it is. And they usually do that through college and stuff, which is great. But for this county, we need jobs for the tax base. And that's what'll help us out. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Mastin.
Yes, and so I think that there's several things. We can work with our schools and our community college to provide for training opportunities for the workforce need, for the city, for the county, for the hospital, for law enforcement, you know, by providing vocational ed and providing post-training or nursing classes. Whatever it is that we have jobs here that are living wage jobs that will attract our students. And so by promoting that career opportunities within the school system and then getting the schools to offer the trainings for the jobs that we have a need for, because it's difficult for us to find employees. And so preparing our youth for those jobs and letting them start thinking about that when they're sophomores and juniors and seniors, so that they're gearing up for it. A lot of times, if they don't have a role model who owns a business or who works as a nurse or who is in law enforcement, those aren't things that they're thinking about being. So by us developing those programs and mentorships within the school systems, that will help, I think, a lot. And I think we also need to bring outside business. You know, the county has ability to provide for tax incentives or buildings or land to bring in a business that provides for living wages that would provide for more opportunity for our students here locally too.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
This community has so much to offer, and success in this community especially is doable. It is necessary for those that want to take the risk to move forward. We've had, of course, with the COVID closures, significant impact on a lot of small businesses that never are going to come back because so much of their money went into opening that business in the first place, and once it's shuttered, they'll not return. However, you look at in our community right now, we have trades that are shutting their doors, and the ones that we have remaining are elder. These people are getting older, and so, we could find ourselves without a welding operation very shortly in Del Norte County. We have a very successful business, a fashion blacksmith, and we're driving them out. That fashion blacksmith brought thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars every year into our community and gave good, high-paying jobs to the welders that worked in there. And those welders will find themselves without a job shortly. We need to encourage those trades, carpentry, plumbing, electrical, engineer, and we also have to look towards our local resources now, and that is going to be Humboldt Polytech. Having a technology resource like that close by is going to give our young children an opportunity that they didn't have close to home to learn the skills that now we see many people just working from home in those tech industries, so they can earn a good wage living almost anywhere.
Thank you. Any follow-up or clarifying questions?
Not at the moment.
Thank you. Our next question will come again from Jessica Cenar Andrews of Wild Rivers Outpost.
In March, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission released an environmental impact statement recommending removal of 4 hydroelectric dams on the Klamath River. Fisheries biologists, conservation groups, and tribal representatives say dam removal is key to the restoration of the river's once legendary salmon runs. But dam removal has met with opposition from Jackson County commissioners most recently, who argue that the dams are crucial to firefighting efforts. As the county supervisor with the Klamath River in your district, where do you stand on dam removal?
We'll start with Mr. Jones.
With the dam removals, I've been trying to get as much information on that as I can. I understand that the salmon, even with the dams up several years ago, was actually a good runs with the dams there. And it's just been over the last few years when we've been in this drought that there's been a problem with the salmon run. I also think that with the dams being there, they not only do fire suppression, would have fire suppression, but they would also have an impact in our Central Valley for watering for our food. But with that being said, I'd have to look further into the research on the salmon, in the salmon runs, because they were saying that over the next 2 years they were anticipating them to be larger than they have been in the last several. So, like I said, I'm a little bit on the fence on that, I guess would be the best part at this point. I need to do a little bit more research on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Markel.
Well, I'm against the removal of the dam. We got to look at we have to have food. We got to have fire. Where are we going to get that from if we don't have no water? Basically the dam holds the water back so we can basically have these necessities. As far as the salmon run in an 8-year cycle. I'd like to maybe learn a little more on the cycle on the Klamath River as far as itself, but the economics is not going to be there, as far as your move the dam for power. Where are we going to get power from? Basically, until that's solved, the needs of a lot of people that you're talking about too, but I feel sorry for the salmon. Basically, salmon need to run, and we need to find some way of making their life a little better. I don't know how we can do that. They've had step ladders on it. I know that there's a lot of tributaries that go into the Klamath River. You know, you got Blue Creek, them areas there that the salmon spawn in and stuff like that. They're not affected by the dam, you know. So, I mean, there's a lot of things to be said about that. I think we just need to do more talking about it, but I don't think removing dams is at this point what we need.
Thank you. Supervisor Mastin.
Yes, I support dam removal for several reasons. The science is there that shows that ecosystems, when they're given a chance, repair themselves quite quickly. We have a number of commercial fishermen, sport fishermen, guides, sport fishermen in the river, and tribes who depend on that fishery. They still support their families by that. They still support businesses in this community. My business, RV parks, motels, restaurants. We still generate a lot of income off of the fishery, and it's been in a declined state for a number of years. But dam removal will bring the fish back to the river, and the science is there that shows that it is a good thing. The Pacific Fisheries Fishermen's Federation Association supports this. You know, everyone is supporting this, and our county should support it too. It's the second largest river in the state of California. It provides for a lot of recreation, tourism, and it should be important to us that we support the dam removal. There is no reason scientifically that we should not support dam removal. And I brought it to the Board of Supervisors. They're not all in support of it. They have not taken a formal position, but I'm going to bring individuals to the table that can provide for that science background, can provide for the necessity for the local economy, as well as for the resources of the Klamath River, so that they can reconsider supporting the removal of the dams.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
I do not support the removal of the dams at this point in time. The science that was used to base the opinion that drove the decision to remove the dams has been discredited. That study has been found to have far too many flaws to determine as whether or not dam removal is going to be appropriate and will do anything to restore the salmon. Besides that, those dams provide us with cheap electricity, green electricity. It also provides for agricultural needs, not only in Del Norte County, but elsewhere. So at this point in time, until further study is done, I would not. However, I would support what happened, unfortunately, prior to this consideration, and that was the closure of fish hatcheries. Salmon fish hatcheries used to exist on every single dammed river in order to grow and raise hatchlings, in order to make sure that there was plentiful salmon in these rivers, even though the dams were put up and exist. And many of those hatcheries have been shut down. So I would support having hatcheries reinstated in many of these rivers and locations.
Thank you. Ms. Colton.
My concern is, I've read the reports about the scientific reports on the dam removal from the scientists, and my largest concern, I think, now is when we put things up like this, now we've become dependent on the water for the agriculture. We've become dependent on the power supply that it's supplying. And even though the fish are being harmed and the fish aren't plentiful, as I worked down there for so many years, it seemed like every year they just depleted and depleted and depleted. So now you've got two sides, and it's like I'm not sure which one's right sometimes and which one's wrong, because the fact that we put them up and now we're relying on these resources, but the tribes, the local fishermen, the guides, they've all relied on those resources also for a lot of years. And they do feed a lot of families, and they do bring a lot of tourists, and they do bring money to that economy in Klamath. So at this point, I'm really on the fence on which way to go. I I haven't made a stand at this point, only because I truly see both sides. But my district is Klamath, and so I need to stand by Klamath at this point. And so I would think that they need to be removed.
Thank you. Any follow-up or clarifying questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Mike Thornton from KFUG Community News.
Thank you. Can we talk about housing? We very often get kind of mired in the issue of housing for people who are homeless. That's really important. And so I don't want to put that off the table. But we've also had the harbor master tell us he has employees at the harbor who can't find housing. We had a very well-known and hardworking pharmacist in our community that had to leave because he couldn't find housing for his family. So what can and will you do as a county supervisor to try and increase and improve the housing stock in this community, all the way up from transitional type housing to workforce housing? And I would like you also to specifically address the issue of short-term and vacation rentals in this community and the effect that they are having on depleting the housing stock in this community. And that is for all of you. Thank you.
And we'll start with Mr. Markel.
Yeah, housing it's a big problem. If you go around our area, First Track, there's a lot of housing that's just sit there. Don't ask me why yet, because I haven't, whether it's gone up on a tax sale or whatever, maybe we need to start addressing this a little bit sooner. As far as like condos and that kind of homes or whatever in the harbor, that's just you're going to get people moving into there maybe in the summertime, and they'll bring some money there for a while for tax base, but them homes will probably sit during the winter. So you're not really addressing for the people that live in this area. That's just a short time fix for people that are traveling through, which is not really a bad thing, but it still is not a good thing for the housing market. We need to make building a house more accessible. You know how hard it is to get permits and what they require, and just to get water hooked up and to your housing is terrible. Like I tried to get water put on my property on Kings Valley, $4,000, just put water on it. And there was a catch to it. Well, you're gonna have to put up a building. Well, I wanna put water on it for now, maybe build another year or so. They won't allow that. You gotta have a building permit to do anything. We need to make things a lot more easier for people to build. And then the housing market will help itself. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Mastin.
Yes, so we are in a housing crisis. I've heard while I'm meeting with people, the county, when we hire an employee from somewhere else, they can't find a house. They can't even find something to rent. The correctional officers at the prison have 90-some employees that they're bringing in, and they're having to get an RV and stay in an RV park because they cannot find housing in the area. So I want to encourage everyone to look at the housing element that's being revised under the general plan. You need to take a look at that and be sure to provide your input under public comment, because it's going to be critical, because that's what we're going to use when it comes to us to adopt. We're going to be looking at that. I think it's our job to streamline, because we're in a crisis, streamline the permitting process and to be creative for providing for some sort of incentive for people to build homes. The Airbnb and vacation rentals are a problem, and people, have a right to make money and to have vacation rentals as a way to make money, because they're making good money from it. But I'm looking at what other counties are doing with this crisis so that we can bring that to the table and see if something will work for us in dealing with the number of Airbnbs that are being planned for and developed here. So we have a crisis, and we're going to have to get creative on how we address it, and it's not going to go away. It's just going to get worse.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
We need to look outside the box on many of these things. We have to encourage to change our policies to make it much more attractive for those that are coming in, whether it's building homes or whether it's building apartments. We need a lot more of the reasonable apartment living in Del Norte County for the assisted through low income or through assisted living for younger people, because many of the people that live in this community, they're making minimum wage, which is a good wage at $13 or $14 an hour. However, to find a rental in Del Norte County at this point in time that is affordable under that, without having to live with 2 or 3 other people in your apartment, is impossible. And so we need to encourage and there is dollars out there for low income housing being built. And so hopefully we can attract that type of construction. And then it is just finding those locations that are available, that are distressed, that we can, as a county, move forward to try to encourage the sale of those properties and the development of those properties, giving tax incentives to those distressed pieces of property that we see throughout our district, and looking at how do we incentivize the purchase and the building in those areas.
Thank you. Ms. Colton.
So Del Norte County has right at $6,000 stick-built houses. The VRBOs and those rentals are about 3% of it. So I don't see that. I truly believe that if you own a piece of property, you abide by all the laws and that you pay your taxes, that you should be able to do what you want with your own property. I don't think that the county should be able to tell you what to do with your property. With that being said, I think we have to look at why houses aren't being built here. Number one is the cost. First of all, getting permits. Going through the process here is ridiculous. We have to streamline our process. The next thing is, people used to come in here, I don't know if you guys remember when the prison was being built, and Washington Park area and over on Inyo with all of the apartments being put there. Everybody did prospect building. They did all this building, but now you can't afford to do that. Do you know how expensive lumber is? I mean, people are having to build one house at a time and then sell that house to get the funds to build the next house. They can't build the 10, 20 houses at a time anymore. And so my family was in construction for a very long time, and they would do 2, 3, 4 houses at a time. They don't do that anymore. It's one, sell it, go to the next one. Do you see all these parks that are out there, these different cul-de-sacs that have 2 and 3, and all the other lots are blank because they can't. Our gas prices are outrageous, which is making our lumber outrageous. So there's a lot to, this is a big puzzle. And so it's not just, our vacation rentals aren't just the culprit in this. There is a huge problem out there, and it's starting with gas prices, with a big picture, a lot of the above. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
With the housing shortage, I agree with Ms. Colton. The price of lumber is outrageous. When I was doing building inspections in Southern California, it was running $100 to $150 a square foot to build a house. Now, with the way lumber prices are, it's over $300 a square foot and climbing. That is expensive to build. But we also have that problem with the Airbnbs. Okay, I was reading a study, I just glanced at it, but they were saying that there was 151 Airbnbs that are registered with the county. And they estimate that there's over 400 Airbnbs that are not registered with the county, that are not paying their taxes and paying their dues. That's a whole different issue. So I believe that 3% is higher and closer to more like 8 or 9%. My first thing as being a supervisor would be to get an accounting of all our Airbnbs that are in the county stop giving permits for Airbnbs at this point until we have that accounting. Second, there needs to be an expedited permitting process for building homes or accessory dwelling units, which the state of California has allowed now. ADUs are what you could call a stopgap, I would say, for housing, where people can have some sort of housing, affordable housing, because they're smaller. They're not a home per se, but they still have all the elements, and you can have a place to live. And those things can be at a fairly low rental price. There's also in the works that the County Board of Supervisors is looking at for affordable housing that goes all the way from $12,000 a year all the way up to $60,000 a year, broken into 3 separate deals. They're already addressing, I think it was 500 lots or properties in the county. I think that's the number. I'm not 100% sure, but they have those that are already being addressed.
Thank you. Any follow-up or clarifying questions?
I do. By making an effort to try and provide some sort of housing for the poorest members of our community, many of them homeless, some 500 to 800 is the last number that I've heard. Is that turning Del Norte County into a mecca and a utopia for homeless people?
We'll start with Mr. Wilson.
There are many problems surrounding the homeless issue, and if elected, what I'll be looking for is some of the plans that we've seen in other communities that have worked well, and that is to find an area and dedicate an area for the homeless to have and to encamp and to provide services in that area for them to utilize. Some area that is close enough to the things that they desire that they will actually go and use the area.
Time. Thank you. Ms. Colton.
I think we need to have, we just received a grant that's going to put up a shelter for homeless. I think our next step is transitional housing, and it does need to be in an area that there's a grocery store, there's services, things that they need in order to have them live on a daily basis in order to prosper. And it needs to be a transitional house that they can move into our community afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
I understand we have that grant for transitional housing. I have a lot of ideas on how to do that, and 20 seconds is not not the arena to do that in, but I could talk to you about that afterwards.
Fair enough.
Thank you. Mr. Markel.
Well, I think we ought to help the people that need help, basically. I mean, as far as housing, give them the housing, and then we need to address the rest of the homeless problem, as a mental health and stuff like that, and get them help. You know, as far as the drug problem, I think we need to lock them up. I'm sorry, but that's it.
Thank you. Supervisor Mastin.
Did I not answer? I thought I already answered. Which question is this?
The follow-up.
Oh, our follow-up? This our closing statements?
No. It's,
follow-up.
There have been people who have made statements like trying to do something to address housing for the poorest people in our community, that's turning Del Norte County into a utopia for homeless people, a mecca for homeless people. Do you agree with that?
No, I think that there's housing needs, and we need to provide that to meet the needs of everyone. There needs to be affordable housing. There needs to be housing for those fortunate to have, 2 incomes that can support buying a home or renting a home. So we have a lot of needs, and I think we have to meet everyone's needs in our community, and we have an obligation to ensure that people have safe, affordable housing.
Thank you.
Up next is our question that has been submitted to us online by the public. The format will be the same as the previous section. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to address the question as they please.
The question is, there are 2 community service districts in District 5, the Klamath CSD and the Birch Ocean View CSD. How are the needs of the 2 CSDs in District 5 alike, and how do their needs differ? And what issue is priority number 1 in both community service districts? And we'll hear first from Supervisor Mastin.
Geez. Okay, so Klamath Community Service District does have 9 employees that provide for the maintenance and service of their, and they have been in partnership with the Yurok tribe to address improvements to the system. And so I know that they provide transparency with their budgets, and with anyone that comes into the meeting, their meetings are open, and I think that they have a lot more that they could do. I think community service districts need to know that they can use their money to improve their districts, and that they can, seek grants to improve services within their district, like whether it's the connectivity or it's improvement on roads or beautification. There are things that they can go after, and they're not doing. I don't see either one of them doing that. I think that I've heard concerns from people who live in Birch Track that they're not able to see a budget. I looked for the budget and the reporting myself, and they say they have 5 employees, but they don't pay any of their employees, so I'm assuming they're volunteers. I've heard that the budget isn't available, and to members who come to ask for it. So I don't know more than that. As far as the differences between the two.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
I know of a little bit about the district in Klamath, and that they're looking at issues surrounding the water storage container, as well as illegal hookups into the system that are not part of the system, but that have been done illegally into the system, and their concerns with how that's done and what damage it may cause to their infrastructure. So those are issues that I know are somewhat unique to them. The other district in the Birch Track, I have not looked into the details of that district, and while I've been through the area, I haven't heard of any serious complaints about the service that the community is being provided with.
Thank you. Ms. Colton, sorry.
So in working in Klamath and with the economic development, we worked with the water department down there quite a bit. There between the tribe and the water board, and we started working with them when we built the Redwood Hotel Casino, and started making agreements to fix their tank and to do some of the improvements. When I left, some of that still hadn't been done, and they were still working forward to trying to get that done. I read the report from LAFCO on the Birch Track Water District, and basically they have 700 households that they serve, and there's 2,600 people that they serve. Now they will be serving an expansion of the Elk Valley Rancheria, as you can see, and their property as it gets larger. I haven't heard any problems with that district, and I do think there's money out there on the table that both of the districts could go out and get. Sorry, my allergies. But as far as anybody being disgruntled with hookups or how it's being done, I haven't heard of any of that on the Birch side. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
I worked for the KCSD for a year, and I didn't know Margaret would hire 9 people to work on our water district. KCSD is a very small water district. It only had 47 hookups, and they do have their own problems and issues that they have been working through with LAFCO, and they're in the process of taking care of those issues. They not only provide water, but they also provide the wastewater treatment facility for the town site. As far as the Birch Track goes, I haven't read anything or heard anything about any problems with their water district at this point. I don't anticipate them to have any problems unless something goes wrong with Elk Valley. putting in the new golf course that I understand they're going to be putting in at some point, which is going to need a lot of water. But that'll be something that's in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Markel.
I really don't know much about the Klamath Water District, but I can tell you a little bit about Birch Ocheview. I'm the president of the water board. Okay, we provide water, clean drinking water to the public, and there we have 5 board members. It's run just like any other board. Basically, we have agendas. We meet once a month. We have 1 employee, which is a secretary. Okay, we have a tank on top of the hill that creates the pressure. I mean, we work for the people in that district, you know, as far as to provide them a service. Far as grant money, we're always trying to find ways of making it better. Right now, we get $9.75 per household. I mean, that money is positioned that we put a new pipeline in between State Street. It starts right at the dump, goes up State Street to create a loop to provide clean drinking water so it doesn't get stagnant. This year, the road going up to the tank, we put over $100,000 into that road because if we would have lost that, the tank would have been non-usable. So that's where this money is going that we put out of that district. You know, it's working for the people. I mean, you got to remember the way we look at it on the board is the members of Birch Ocheview Street own that system, not the board members. We work for them. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all the public comment we have tonight.
To wrap up tonight's candidate forum, each candidate has 2 minutes to make their closing statements. We'll begin with Susan Masten.
Sustainable partnerships are critical to deal with limited resources and for us to be able to go after infrastructure dollars that are needed in law enforcement, roads, education, jail, health. And as your supervisor, I have already held 4 town hall meetings to hear what your concerns are and what solutions that you have identified. And I'm already beginning to work on some of those issues as far as connectivity. I'm already looking at some of the homeless issues by looking at models that are out there that could be successful to use here. I'm already looking at what is our permitting process and how do we streamline and remove barriers to bring housing to the county. And I have begun to also look at what are those solutions for a jail and public service and law enforcement to the community by meeting with all of the city, county, correctional office, CHP. I've met with them, each of them, and I've been talking to them about how we work together to better serve and what are the things that we can do together to bring back the trust and support from the community. And I have found them very open and very willing to do more for the community. It's my job to ensure that there's transparency and accountability in the office and to ensure that your voice is heard in government decisions. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to working with you and for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. Up next is Dean Wilson.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak here to this public as well as to those that are listening. I'm running because I have the experience working with county government, understanding our budgets, and having good working relationships with those that are seated right now in county government. That long time knowledge helped me when I was sheriff getting through very difficult times. The success that I had was never mine. It was the fact that I had people that worked below me that understood and implemented the plans going forward. Without them, there is no success. As a board of supervisor, I'm not coming out and fixing your roads. I'm not making sure the water district is done. It's going to be done by the county partners that we have in our administration, implementing the policies and plans that have to be done at the board level and then carried out throughout our departments, whether it's the sheriff's office, whether it's the roads department, whether it is the auditor's office or the clerk's office. What I hope to bring is a vision of where Del Norte County is going to go. Like I said earlier, I look on the horizon and I see difficult times ahead of us, inflationary costs, reductions in a lot of the drivers, economic drivers currently that we enjoy that are going to be diminishing over time. We have, as a board, to stand and see that coming and make the appropriate policy and plans and implement those plans going forward so that Del Norte County can get through these difficult times better. I have a history of doing that, and I can do it again for Del Norte County. I'm doing it because I love this community, and I want to see a bright future for it. And we can get through this, but as we always have, together. I don't have all the ideas, but I'll find them. I'll find them if I'm elected in as supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. Up next is Terri Colton.
So you've gotten a lot of information tonight about us and about our views. I hope you take the time to really research us. I hope you read the material that we've sent out to you, because a few questions, here and there is not enough to decide who's your next supervisor. I think you need to look at our history. I think you need to understand the devotion that each of us have put into our community. I've lived here basically most of my life, and I have done thousands and thousands of hours of volunteer work, because I was always raised that if you take from a community, you need to give back. And that's how I've always lived. So I'm hoping that you do your research. I'm very strong in economic development. My fiscal responsibility is very strong. I take budgets apart, I pull them apart, I pull businesses apart and pull them back up. And if I would be glad to start the task force for the sheriff's department to have that happen, because that's what we're going to have to do to get that sheriff's office back on track. It's not going to take little oversight committees, and we don't need any more committees. We need a full-fledged task force that's going to pull it apart from the bottom to the top and figure it out. There needs to be accountability, and we need to take care of that. I just hope you give me a chance to show you what I can do. I've exceeded expectations in my jobs and in my volunteer work, and I hope that you give me a chance to do that for you. Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. Up next is David Jones.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the people on the questionnaire board and everybody that's here. I would like to address the viewers and the listeners if I can. I've been planning and working for change for Del Norte County for over 2 years now. I've been going to the Board of Supervisors meetings. I've been part of committees. I've gone out with DHHS with the intent of running for the next election. This was after the last election. I have been doing my homework. I have been doing the things that I need to do to be your next supervisor. I've been doing all the research that is necessary for this position, and I have made a strong commitment to this county, and that should show in the past. I think you should do your research on all your candidates, be well-informed, understand their positions, and like Ms. Colton said, you can't make a decision in a 45-minute or 50-minute question and answer period. Go to my website, David Jones, District 5, or go to my Facebook page, Daves, D-A-V-E-S, Jones, District 5, and look at my posts and look at what I've been doing. Please do that. And when I'm elected, I will be the voice of change for District 5 and for our entire Del Norte County. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your statement. Up next is David Markel.
Okay, as you know, I'm not a politician, okay? I'm just a regular guy that basically is trying to run for the Board of Supervisor. You know, I own land. I've seen the problems in the district. I've tried to get things done, and things just doesn't do that. It doesn't do it. My priority is basically two things. You know, you've got roads. I mean, if you don't have good roads, you don't have good law enforcement, you don't have good ambulance service, you don't have nothing. Okay? The roads we have are being used way too much. Even they're not county maintained roads, but the public uses them roads because to get through, even the fire department does. They're making these roads go bad. I've seen in the past, as far as the sheriff's department, we need better funding. I mean, the needs of this district is tremendous. You've got lots of crime going on. You know, you've got these people that go to jail, that create crimes. First thing they do, they let them out. But there's no room in jail because their priority is just keeping the person that's most dangerous, you might as well say. So there's no repercussions for crime. I mean, you got to have repercussions. If you don't, I mean, you're going to have lawlessness. You're going to have homeless. They're going to do drugs. It doesn't matter because drugs is kind of they just let them right back out. So what does it matter? So we need all the two things to be done. Basically, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Susan Masten, Dean Wilson, Terri Colton, David Jones, and David Markel for taking part in tonight's forum. I'd also like to thank the United Methodist Church for providing the venue.
Yes, thank you so much to each of the candidates for coming out tonight and sharing your values with the community you may soon be representing. And thank you everyone who put this forum together tonight. Happy elections, y'all. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Happy election. I like that.
Thank you for joining us for tonight's District 5 Candidate Forum. Tonight's forum will remain available for viewing on Facebook and will be posted to the Redwood Voice YouTube channel later this week. Thanks again to all the candidates who took part in all 3 candidate forums, and thanks to the community members who submitted their questions. For Redwood Voice and KFUG Community Radio, I'm Paul Kritz.